Hello and welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another Historical Humans Heritage. And today we are going to South America where we are looking at the Cave of Hands. And for some reason, I can't seem to figure out why it would have that name.
Yeah.
I'm
This
just
particular,
struggling
yeah,
here.
yeah. And in order to be specific, this is the Cave of Hands, Rio Pinturas. Um, as the cave itself is known for its depictions of Neolithic handprints that have been painted onto its walls, alongside other more common art, such as depictions of animals, which are also frequent in the region. It is important just to point out the exact cave of hands we are talking about because there are a number of Neolithic art structures which have very similar names throughout the world because they're all named for the thing they depict most. And occasionally, people depict hands a lot. It's one thing we're always guaranteed to have at least two of.
Yeah, the actual name is the de las Manos Rios Pinturas, which is based in Argentina. And it's kind of interesting. So it's this basically 10 to 13,000 year old cave with depictions of hands. And I actually know a little bit about this where these depictions, they didn't just take paint and like run it over their hands and like onto the wall. The way in which they actually painted was they put their hand there and they chewed up whatever it was for the pigment and they spit it out over their hands to give that shadow effect. So what you're actually seeing is like the shadow of where their hand was and pigment all around it.
Yeah, which is impressive given that of the five colors here, um, at least two of which would have involved you chewing on metal. That
Which ones?
so the red and purplish colors come from mixing iron, and the black one comes from manganese.
Oof.
Both of which have been oxidized in order to make these pigments. Uh, you're not eating a sword, thankfully.
I mean, I'm sure plenty of
Uh,
people have, but
yeah,
it's
yeah. So this
interesting
is
how they made a lot of the pigments.
yeah, yeah. The white is from kaolin, and the yellow is from natrojarosite. Both of which I believe are stones. I could be wrong. I don't know what kaolin is. Yeah, it's a form of clay.
Okay. I'm not
Um,
surprised.
It's a clay with a high amount of aluminum in it, so make that three for for chewing on metal.
Yeah, so that was
Your
kind of
poor,
interesting.
these people's poor teeth. This is a hunter gatherer community, um, from about 9,300 years ago to 1,300 years ago. So yeah, pretty long window of potential occupation here.
Well, and
Uh,
the thing that I find very fascinating about this and that you find with artwork is a lot of artwork, it just kind of happens. Like, there's not really a rhyme or reason for a lot of artwork. Like, some artwork depicts animals, some artwork depicts people, figures. This is clearly depicting hands. Like, when you start seeing the development of artwork, you start seeing certain levels of diversification of the society. I always use the specialization of craft, but like you start seeing artistic things propagate throughout human cultures. And I find that to be one of the more fascinating things because you see similar instances all over the world. Like, we have North American hand painting caves. I mean, you have the Lascaux caves in
yeah,
France, you
yeah,
have
yeah.
the
The
caves in
French ones.
Spain. I
Yeah,
mean, you see cave
yeah.
paintings all over the world, and it's one of those things to where it's not a diffusion thing, it's more of an independent invention. People just make art, people draw on things. I mean, I love seeing the Roman graffiti where their names are carved into things like Leviticus was here.
Yeah, yeah, or the Varangians marking the inside of the Hagia Sophia just because like, oh, it's not our god. Quick, carve your name in the wall. But yeah, the at a certain point in any human society, we begin attempting to create art using whatever medium is available, and the most um immediately available medium is hand plus sticky pigment.
Yeah, hand plus paint.
Yeah, hand and paint. It's like, you know, and as the initial picture can prove, all art began as abstract art.
And it will go
Just
back
looking
to
from
being
this
abstract.
truly terrifying sea of hands reaching out for you. Tell me this isn't like a nightmare. Them all just reaching out from the ground.
See, I actually personally see a lot of turkeys. This is clearly just a
You
flock
you
of
you,
turkeys.
you spent too much time with the pilgrim half of the class in kindergarten, didn't you? No, maybe
No, it's more
turkey,
or less just
everyone.
because we're repeating kindergarten 4 times, but
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about, everybody. Uh,
it's very interesting. So it's something that we like to talk about, especially with this, because it's very interesting. And
yeah,
like many caves in human history, it was
mhm.
um, inhabited forever, basically.
Yeah, and honestly, this is an ideal cave for this painting to be on. Because here in Patagonia, the conditions of the cave here have very low humidity, no water infiltration. There's no water coming into the cave from anywhere, and the rock that it's a part of is very stable, which means that it's not the rocks around it and the rock itself is not going to be prone to a collapse or a rock slide under most any reasonable circumstance. So this is the perfect place for to put something that would last forever. Uh, that said, tourism has begun to damage the site, as is all too often the case with these caves.
Yeah, because you
Um,
introduce a lot of humidity, a lot of carbon dioxide, which can very
and
much destabilize a lot of the pigments.
yes, yeah. There also people like to touch things, and people have begun touching and attempting to remove parts of the rock. Um, which is very much a no go. Do not do this. If you are near one of these, if you go see them, you are there to look. You are not there to take. All right. I guarantee you, at some point, somewhere, there will be a souvenir shop where you can buy something.
I want to buy the actual cave.
No one buys the actual cave. You take it by force. Have you not seen a conquistador?
No, I just keep forgetting that you're employed by the British Museum.
I'm not.
I'm
I'm
starting
not,
to think you
though.
are an industry plant from the British Museum to try and save
I
face.
I have. When have I supported them? This is like completely out of the blue. If you guys think Justin is insane, like the video. So many likes.
And if you think Column is an industry plant, leave a comment down below if you agree with me.
I don't like.
All right, so how is the site
Anyway,
protected then?
uh, so this site has been protected since 1975, during which the province of Santa Cruz, which contains the site, uh, issued a law that effectively actually created for the region conservation for historical, archaeological, paleontological sites. There's been a number of later decrees in the 80s and especially in the 90s, up to 2003 um, from Santa Cruz and from the National Congress of Argentina, to ensure that there is protection on sites in general, of which this was included. I believe this is one of the original sites listed out in the first law code about preserving heritage in Argentina.
Wow.
Um, yeah. It has had its own oversight committee since 2006, which is only I believe 7 years after it was inscribed in UNESCO World Heritage as a World Heritage Site. Um, the committee has a permanent presence in the local village, which allows it to work with the people who are very much now dependent on this tourism for their livelihoods, on how best to preserve it without cutting off these people from, say, the main source of economic prosperity. Which is always
Interesting.
something you want to do. You do not want to be fighting the local population with your conservation laws. That's a lose lose.
No, and if they're actually on board, then you have a really winning
Yeah.
formula.
Yeah, because when you end up fighting the local population, what happens is the site doesn't get protected and is slowly destroyed while basically fight an intractable land war with people. And that's not what you want. So it's good to see that um, the measures here are in place to ensure that the locals are as much in defense of this site as the national government is.
The locals, not the yokels.
The locals, yeah.
Well, wonderful.
Um,
I think that pretty much wraps this site up pretty well then.
yeah, definitely. The one last thing to mention is they have been they've been taking regular assessments of rock deterioration, both at the site and at other locations without the handprints, in an effort to track just how damaging tourism is so that they know whether and when to implement additional safeguards, which is really a nice thing to see. You're getting like a scientific study of how fast does rock degrade.
Honestly, though, it is a very interesting study, and it's kind of the downside to a lot of
Yeah.
this historical tourism, because a lot of times people think preservation is preserving the site and allowing it open up for tourism, but tourism can actually negatively impact and actually does negatively impact almost every site. We talked about Lasso that's having issues with moisture because people's breaths with caves like this, but then also you see sites like Machu Picchu in South America where you're getting a lot of foot traffic that's causing instability in the site. Or
Yeah.
like local encroachment of airports is destroying other natural sites. And it's like a double edged sword because you want to preserve it, you want to keep it in place, it's important, but people want to see it.
Yeah. And it's just it's good to have a study like this. This was a 10-year study that began in 97 to basically track how fast does a rock degrade when no one is messing with it, and how fast does the rock degrade when you have tourism, which is a good comparison to have because let's be honest, weathering exists too, and it's good to have that benchmark of what is significantly bad. You know,
Yeah.
Key is having that cutoff valve in place. All right, we jumped the first marker. Stop everything.
But
But
that's
that's
just it. It's kind of a it's a catch-up science because we try to figure out how to best preserve, how to best stop degradation. It's there's a lot of battles behind the scenes that you don't really hear about that museums and collections are fighting with constantly.
yeah. But yeah, that's a good point to end this on, and we should all see you next time as we try and finally end the video.